In 2001, I worked in an office at One New York Plaza in Manhattan, and my window looked to the northwest at the World Trade Center, and I watched a plane fly into the World Trade Center. And after evacuating the building, I watched the World Trade Center fall.
A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us.
I spent the following week as part of the recovery effort with the American Red Cross Disaster Services at the site, assisting firefighters and police officers and rescue workers. The following Monday, I was called by my boss, and he said, time to go back to work. And I thought it was worth considering what we're doing and why these things are happening. And I was thinking more about what's going on behind the scenes that creates this tension, that causes people to attack one another. But if you look at the root of the 9/11 attacks, there was oil there. And if we consider even today, what is the big environmental catastrophe overarching carbon emissions and global warming and climate change, it is the petroleum industry, first and foremost. I'm Jason Nichols. I'm co-owner and co-leader of Windhorse Orchard, a project for the Living Building Challenge and for Passive House that is a regenerative house design project. I first learned about the Living Building Challenge around 2009. And it was an idea that I wanted to pursue, and I was overwhelmed with what the Living Building Challenge covered in terms of how holistic the standard is. I didn't know how or where to begin. And it wasn't until I met my wife Christine in 2017 that the pieces started to come together for us to actually tackle the Living Building Challenge as a team. Before I moved to California, I worked in Wall Street, and I was involved in making transactions as are made around this global economy in ways where I didn't know the consequences of what I was doing. And I started to think about other costs, primarily the externalized environmental costs that come from our transactions, from our construction, from our consumption. And I wanted to know more about what actually happens on the ground, what happens to the soil, the water, the air, as we engage in global trade. It's hard to understand the consequences of modern civilization. I've stepped back, I've asked the question to myself, is modern civilization even sustainable? Even if we were to examine each and every impact of every single consumption decision we make, what would it look like if we could bring our lives to a place of having very, very low impact? This has been an experiment for me to see how far we can go in modern civilization, working with the culture that we have around us. What can we do to reduce our impact on the environment, and how many different ways we can do that? I think the Living Building Challenge is a launch pad for us to begin thinking holistically. And I think that's an important start because there are so many different considerations for what it means to have an environmental impact. And the Living Building Challenge was inspiring to me because it covered so many of those issues. I first started having an interest in Living Building Challenge, particularly out of an interest in water conservation. I wasn't as cognizant of other issues like toxicity in building materials, or equity in terms of the community and how construction workers are treated and issues like that. What I came to understand is when you begin the process of examining all the factors that determine whether you're having a good or a bad impact on the environment, you have to be something of an extremist to embark on that journey. And then once you've embarked on that journey, you actually have to be extremely flexible and forgiving. Because what you find, and something I stress to a lot of people, is there isn't a perfect solution. At least within the context, the cultural context we're working with, we're not holding ourselves up as an example of what everyone must do. What we want to share with people is a certain frame of mind, a certain perspective that will guide each person to their own unique answer. The first thing that people have to have is a desire to know more. We were attempting to do within the resources we have is to give people as many inspiring ideas and examples of aspects that they could adjust in their lifestyle. Not only in the house, but on the landscape as well. And the relationship between the house and the landscape. There may be one or two things that we do that people can do, even with their own labor and only with the purchase of materials, that can take them a little bit further. We call what we're doing a journey into regenerative design because it is a journey not just for us, but it's a process for us as a community and as a society to experiment and see if we can at least move in the right direction toward more sustainability in our lives. We need to shrink our footprint, and that's become more and more clear to me through this project, is we need to consider smaller living space and learning how to get along better in smaller spaces.